Welcome Highlanders. This is the lecture for March 11th, 2020 for Econ 3. This lecture is in response to the coronavirus outbreak, so they encourage us to switch to more of an online format, or at least give you that option. So you can watch this lecture as opposed to coming to class on Wednesday, March 11th. So let's go ahead and get it going here. So remember where we left off last time? We were talking about how firms maximize profits. And remember the profit maximizing rule is to always produce where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So if marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, then you definitely want to make that unit because it's going to add to your profits. But if marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue, then you don't want to make that unit because the cost of making that unit outweighs the benefit of revenue of making that unit, and that will subtract from your profits. And we explored how to do that graphically, and the last thing we talked about was firms making an economic profit. So remember, if marginal revenue equals marginal cost, the intersection occurs above the average total cost curve, and that firm is making an economic profit. So we started that graph in our last class, but we didn't quite finish it. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of redo it now and make sure that we go through it step by step. And to do that, I'm going to exit the full screen mode because I can choose from different colors when I'm in this mode here. We'll go ahead and draw the graph this way. All right, so I'm going to be using a stylus, which is not always the easiest thing to write with. I ran out to Best Buy and bought one today in response to the email about this coronavirus outbreak. So I'm going to do my best to make this as straight as possible, but again, it's pretty hard to do given I'm writing on my laptop with this pen. Okay. So there's our graph, right? So we're talking about a price taker making an economic profit. Please notice that I put the heading of the graph in the slide for you so that you can help, so that I can help you keep them straight in your notes. Now remember that we're talking about the demand and the price and quantity of an individual firm and not the entire market. So we're going to be using lowercase letters here. So this is going to be a lowercase p on the vertical axis. And then we're going to have a lowercase q here on the horizontal axis. Now remember, for price takers, they have that perfectly flat, perfectly elastic demand curve that looks something like this. Draw that flat or horizontal line there. And this is their demand curve, and that is where price equals marginal revenue, which is true for price takers and only for price takers. Right? And so again, this is our price. And we'll say, to make the numbers easy here, that this price is $5. Okay, so now we're going to start drawing in our cost curves from Chapter 8, starting with our marginal cost curve, right, which I believe was orange. So remember that marginal cost might decrease at first as we learn how to do things, but then because of that law of diminishing marginal returns, which we explored with that game in class where we had to write the equation in the box as many times as possible, right, it's going to eventually start to slope upward. So again, this is our marginal cost. And then we're going to add in our average total cost curve. Hopefully remember by now that the shape of that average total cost curve is that it's U-shaped, right? So we're going to draw that U, and remember that marginal cost has to intersect average total cost at the minimum point of that U, right? Remember that's because your marginal pulls your average. When your marginal is less than your average goes down. When your marginal is greater than your average goes up. So that's our average total cost curve there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start identifying some points. So remember, the profit maximizing rule says to produce wherever our marginal cost is equal to our marginal revenue, right? So that's where our marginal cost curve intersects our marginal revenue curve here. We'll call that point A, right? And we'll go ahead and come down here, and that's going to be the quantity that we choose to produce, Q star. That is our profit maximizing quantity. And again, to make the numbers easy, we'll just say that that is 20 units. So anywhere between 0 and 20 units, marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. Remember, that demand curve is also our marginal revenue curve for a price taker. So that flat, straight demand curve is greater than our marginal cost curve, all the way up to Q star. So you definitely want to make those units, right? Beyond Q star, our marginal cost curve is higher than our marginal revenue curve. That means we're losing money for every unit we make, so we don't want to make those. So Q star is our profit maximizing quantity. Now, in order to figure out where our costs are, we got to stay on this vertical line here of Q star, and wherever that hits the average total cost curve, right here, call that point B, that gives us our costs, C. And again, for the sake of argument, we'll say that those costs are $3, right? Again, I'm just giving you those numbers, trying to make the numbers easy for you. All right, so this is kind of where we left off last time with this graph. So let's go ahead and talk about how to calculate profits. So remember, profit is equal to total revenue minus total cost. So we need to start calculating out what total revenue and total cost are. So total revenue is equal to price times quantity. I'm going to do this equation up here. So that is P times Q. Right, so if you want to think of it as this price of $5 per unit times the 20 units that we are selling here in our profit maximizing quantity. So it's the area of this box here, right? So again, this is box. If you're going to use the letters of the box, if I don't give you the numbers on the exam, I might just ask you to denote the area using the letters. Right, so this is box P0 Q star A. So if I ask you to use the letters, again, this is box P0 Q star and A, right? So if I can clean that P up a little for you guys. Oh, cleaned it up a little too much. Let me write that back in there. All right, so with that in mind, if I do give you the numbers, then I'd ask you to calculate this on the exam. Please be able to do that as well, and it shouldn't be too hard of a calculation. So remember, we are selling this for $5 per unit times our Q star of 20 units. So this is 5 times 20. That gives us a total revenue of $100. So that's the firm's total revenue. Remember, that's what's going in their cash register, but that's not their profit. That's not what they get to take home at the end of the day. In order to figure that out, we got to subtract from that total revenue our total cost. All right, so our formula for total cost, which I'm going to do in red here, is equal to average total cost times quantity. In other words, it's our cost per unit multiplied by the number of units we're producing. So where do we find average total cost? On our average total cost curve, of course. So you know that we're producing here at Q star, right? So where does that Q star quantity hit our average total cost curve? That gives us our cost of $3, right? So again, if we are you looking at the area of the box, this is going to be box C0 Q star B. Right, so those are the four corners of that box. Again, if I ask you to just give me the area without necessarily giving me the numbers, that's the answer I'll be looking for. So that's C0 Q star B. Right. Now, again, if I give you the numbers, then please be able to calculate them. Right. So the average total cost is $3 per unit times the 20 units that we are producing. That gives us a total cost of $60. So $60 is our total cost, right? So we have total revenue of 100 and total cost of 60. Because our total revenue is greater than total cost, we know that this firm is making an economic profit. And again, we can calculate out what that profit is. So I'm going to do profit in green here. And profit is the total revenue box that's left over after subtracting out our total cost. So again, if you subtract out your total costs from your total revenues, any positive amount you have left over, that is what we call profits, right? So again, this box here represents our profit, and in particular, our economic profit. Right? So again, if we want to calculate that, we certainly can. So profit is equal to total revenue minus total cost. Our total revenue is that $100 that we calculated earlier minus the total cost that we just calculated. And again, that gives us $40 in profit. Now that's what that firm gets to take home, or at least the residual claimants get to take home to help feed their families, right, put their kids through school, that kind of thing. So again, calculate total revenue as price times quantity. Again, you can either give, if I give you the numbers on the exam, please be able to calculate it, or if I just give you the four corners of the box, be able to tell me what box represents total revenue. By the way, when you're doing this four corner thing, it can be P0 Q star A, right? That's usually the formula or format that I'll use. However, if you said it was 0 Q star AP, that's also correct. Right? As long as you go in order, right, you can start with any letter and people know what you're talking about. What you can't do is you can't just like use the corners, so you can't be like P, Q star, and then the other two corners, A and 0, right? If you do that, then again, people aren't going to know what area you're referring to. So in the exam, I'm not going to be able to, I'm not going to trick you or try to tell you to choose between two of the same area there, right? Again, I'll keep the format starting with the left upper corner, P0 Q star A, right? So again, be able to give me the box as well as the numbers. So hopefully you all understood how to do that, right? But if not, don't worry, because we're going to go through a similar graph, right? Only this time we're going to be talking about a price taker making an economic loss, right? So we're going to go back into our PowerPoint mode. Look at the graph there. It's not the most beautiful graph I've ever drawn, but again, it's kind of difficult to draw on this vertical laptop screen with a stylus. So again, we're trying to just make the best of it as we can. So again, that's a firm making economic profit. Now, if that MR equals MC intersection occurs below the average total cost curve, then that is a firm making an economic loss. In other words, if our average total costs are higher than that price that we're charging as given by that intersection between marginal revenue and marginal cost, right, then this firm is going to be making an economic loss. So let's go ahead and graph that out. Right. So what does a price taker making an economic loss look like? Well, again, we're going to go ahead and switch views here so that I can use my different colors. All right, so again, we're going to see if we can do this one a little bit neater, although I'm not making any promises. All right, so there's our vertical axis. There's our horizontal axis. Right, again, we're going to have a lowercase p and a lowercase q because we are just talking about this firm's products and not the entire market total price and quantity. Right, now remember that these are price taker firms, and price taker firms always have that flat, perfectly elastic demand curve, looking something like that. So this is our demand. And again, this is where price equals marginal revenue, which is true for price takers and price takers only. Right. Again, we're going to go ahead and say that price is $5. Just try to keep those numbers easy to work with. Okay. Now, once again, we're going to add in our cost curves from Chapter 8, starting with that marginal cost curve. Remember, that might decrease at first as we learn how to do things better, but because of that law of diminishing marginal returns, eventually it's going to increase, looking kind of like that check mark on that Nike swoosh. And then we're going to add in our average total cost curve. Please remember that that is U-shaped. Only this time we're going to draw our average total cost curve so that it is above that demand curve. So that U is just going to look something like this. Right? Again, probably not the prettiest curve I've ever drawn, but it'll serve for our purposes. So that's our average total cost, right? So again, if we're looking at this graph here, right, there's a couple points that should jump out at you. The first one is, again, your profit maximizing rule. Remember, the profit maximizing rule is where our marginal cost intersects our marginal revenue, right? So again, where that orange line intersects our demand curve, this is point A. That's going to determine our profit maximizing quantity, or the amount that we decide to produce as a firm. Again, that's going to be equal to 20. So anywhere between 0 and 20, once again, marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. You want to make those. Anywhere beyond 20, marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue. You don't want to make those. Right. Now, again, you're going to stay on this vertical plane here where you're looking at Q star equals 20, and you're going to stay on it until you find average total cost in order to figure out where the costs are for this particular firm at its profit maximizing quantity. In this case, you have to go up to the average total cost curve in order to find that. So again, we'll call this point B, and that will give us our costs C. And again, to make numbers easy, we'll just say that these costs are $7 per unit. Okay, so now we're going to calculate again total revenue, total costs, and whether or not this firm is making economic profit or loss. Hopefully you can tell by the title that it is definitely making an economic loss. So let's go ahead and calculate. The equations are the same and the way you go about it is the same. So if you did understand the last graph, this should be a nice review for you. If you didn't understand it, this is another chance to get it. So again, we take price times quantity is our formula for total revenue, right? So again, price times quantity. So again, we're going to take this price, P, O, over the quantity Q star, up to A, and total revenue is going to be the area of that box there. So that is going to be equal to box P0 Q star A, right? And again, if I give you the numbers like I have in this particular graph, then you should be able to calculate that. So we have a price of $5. That's how much the firm is earning per unit, times the 20 units that this firm is buying and that this firm is selling, and that's going to give you $100 in total revenue. Right. So with that in mind, we do need to calculate out total costs. We'll try to do that one here in red. Total costs, remember the formula for that is average total cost times quantity, or cost per unit, times the number of units that we are producing, right, at our profit maximizing quantity. Q's getting ugly. See if we can fix it up a little there. All right, so with that in mind, right, let's go ahead and figure out where that is. So remember, average total cost here is $7 per unit. So that's going to be box C0 Q star B. All right, so our total cost is going to be that big red box there, right? So again, if you're going by the four corners of that box, that's going to be box C0 Q star B, right? Or again, you can think of it as $7 per unit times the 20 units that this firm is producing, and that's going to be equal to a total of $140, right? So again, now we need to calculate the economic profit, or in the case that it's negative, an economic loss. So if we have a situation like we have here where total cost is greater than total revenue, then this firm is making an economic loss, right? So that loss here is this $2 per unit. And it's costing us $7 to make a unit, but the price of that unit is only $5. So we're losing $2 for every unit we make, and we are making 20 units, right? So again, if you want to look at the area of that box, it's the base times height, or 2 times 20, right? That's going to be equal to $40, right? So again, that is kind of the loss that this firm is making at this point. 4 kind of looked a little bit like a 9. I'm going to see if I can adjust that for you there. All right, so again, if you want to go by the 4 corners of that box, you can do so. That is going to be box C, P, A, B. So the big difference between this graph and the last one is that those average total costs are above price, meaning that our costs are greater than our revenues. Whereas in the last graph, our average total cost was below price, so our total revenues were greater than our total costs. Right, so again, whether a firm is making an economic profit or an economic loss, you need to be able to calculate total revenue on the exam, total cost, and again, whether that firm is making a profit or a loss. If that total revenue minus total cost is a positive number, then it's making an economic profit. If total revenue minus total cost is a negative number, then it is making an economic loss. Again, if I don't give you the numbers, be able to tell me the area of the box using the 4 corners of that box. And again, on the exam, I will try to make it pretty uniform as to which 4 corners to use. All right, so that's it for part 1 of this lecture. Right, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and kind of wrap up this part here. So this is what we'll be talking about in the first half of the lecture on Wednesday, March 11th. But I'm going to split these up into 2 parts just so that y'all don't get too bored or tired listening to a really long video here, right? So again, feel free to review this video, and if you had trouble understanding what was going on, right, watch as many times as you need to, or you can go ahead and move on to part 2, or take a break first if you wish, right? And again, I'll be in my office as for my usual office hours this week if you have any questions about anything, right? So hopefully this lecture wasn't too painful for you. I actually did have a little bit of experience with Camtasia over the summer. I actually prepared on how to use it and how to write with a stylus just in case something like this were to ever happen, and I had to convert my lectures online. So as I said in class one time before, I was never a Boy Scout, but always try to be prepared. Hopefully this was a good substitute for coming to class. All right, so I'll see you next time for part 2. Have a good one, and again, let me know if you have any questions or if you need anything. Thank you.